It's draft day. Welcome to the Pig and a Pickle Krueger Show. Larry Krueger, joined by the great Grant Cohn. Draft day is here. We're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations. Northern California. They're in Emeryville, in the East Bay. If you're like me and you live out in the East Bay, check them out in Emeryville. They're open Wednesday through Sunday. They're open 7 days a week in Corte Madera. Get the brisket. Tell Damon and Mary that you're big fans of the Krueger Show, and thanks to them for sponsoring. What's up, my man? How are you? How's draft day going for you?
I haven't even shaved yet. I feel like it's draft night. I'm pacing myself. You know how athletes are when they play at night? They take a nap in the day, eat late. So I'm pacing myself. It's going to be an exciting night, and we'll have so much adrenaline going by like 10 o'clock. If they ever do anything, that it'll probably be hard to go to sleep.
I think Matt Barrows used to call it like a round tripper, like where you stay in your pajamas all day and just never leave the house.
It's a great time.
It's a great time.
Yeah.
Let's get into it, man. The NFL draft, so much speculation, and I guess I entitled this 49ers surprise move ? What do you think? Are the Niners going to make a major surprise move this weekend? In your mind, if they do, what could it be? What do you think is going to be the biggest surprise of draft weekend for the Niners?
Well, I guess they got to decide if they want to get a day one starting.
Right, now you are crackling a little bit. Now you're crackling.
Crackling? I don't understand.
Yeah, now you're crackling.
It's been happening all day. I don't understand what's going on with my thing. I guess I need a new microphone. I don't know what's going on.
It's kind of badly crackling.
It's really bad? It's badly crackling? Hold on. Let me come.
Wait,
I'll be right back.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Let me see what I can do. Just a second.
Okay. Anyway, we're off and running. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. And why don't we do this? Normally, we play the commercials at the end. Why don't we do this? We'll play a little commercial right here for Pig and a Pickle, and we'll give Grant an extra minute to get ready. We are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. As I said, 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. Before we get rolling, usually I put this at the end of the show, but how about a little Pig and a Pickle right here, up front? Bring it. All right, back to the Krueger Show. A little mention there for Pig and a Pickle. Check them out in Corte Madera and in Emeryville. All right, there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen. I think, to me, the biggest surprise in the last 24 hours, and I got to get Grant's thoughts on it, is all the talk about Lamar. And, man, I've turned on Action Network. There's my good buddy Chad Millman talking to a guy about the 49ers flipping Trey Lance to the Ravens for Lamar. Turn on the Dan Patrick show. Dan Patrick is talking about the 49ers trading for Lamar. There we go. We got Grant back. There you go. You back with us?
How do I
Any
sound?
better?
Am I cracking?
Yeah.
Am I cracking?
No, you're good now. It sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
I'm not sure what happened. But I was asking you off the start, and I was talking a little bit about Lamar, all the speculation about Lamar. Before we get to Lamar, I mean, do you see a big surprise brewing on the Niner front, either surrounding Trey, Brandon Aiyuk, the return of Robbie Gould, Kinlaw trade, Lamar? There's been talk about a lot of people speculating about Montez Sweat and Chase Young. You think there'll be are we going to see any big surprise this weekend?
I feel like if a Trey Lance trade happens, it's going to happen tomorrow. Does that seem? I think the teams that'd be interested, it would be a day 2 move, and they might want to see what quarterbacks get drafted tonight. And so I think if anything happens tonight, it's Aiyuk. And I think there's a slim chance that Aiyuk could get traded, and I don't think they'd trade him to the Giants. I think the idea is you don't want to send him to a contender in the NFC, right? Like, that would be dumb. Why would you want to make the Giants stronger? You might have to face the Giants in the playoffs next year. So you could trade him to Houston or the Chargers or whatever AFC team might make an offer if you see a right tackle that could start day 1 that you love. in round 1 or round 2. Otherwise, I don't see a big move. What do you think?
It's interesting. You're focused on the tackle, and we've talked a few times about this. I'm focused on the D end. This guy SJWS says Niners need a package Trey to trade up in the draft. They need a right tackle or an edge bad. My vote is Isaiah Foskey. I just think, Grant, now you were there at the pro day, the fact that Foskey was there and that most people have him going from 20 to 35 in that 15 pick range, and they don't pick till 99. So what? Isaiah Foskey's that invested in the 49ers' long-term due diligence on who they're going to potentially pursue as a free agent 5 years from now? I'm not buying that at all. I'm buying that the 49ers called his agent and said, hey, we got a lot of possibilities about trading up. We don't know if we'll be there or not, but we very well could. And if we are, we want your guy. He's local. Have him show up at our pro day. And so he gets in his car from Antioch and goes to Santa Clara and waste all day. Work. I don't think he didn't work out. I don't think, but I think he met with them. So I actually think, and that's kind of, I don't know that there's going to be a big trade, but I think the edge rusher. I just think when you talk about the Niners, Grant, they think D-line first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. And everything else is after the D-line. And they made the biggest free agent push where? The D-line. Not just with, obviously, Hargrave, but even bringing in the ends. They did lose a couple guys. I think the draft is also going to be about the D-end. Because right now, I love Drake Jackson as a guy, but Drake Jackson, Cleveland Farrell, and Austin Bryant – opposite Bosa, when you lost Ebukam and Amenahue and Jordan Willis, I think the edge rusher is they got to get a starter, and I think Foskey might be their guy. I could see some trade up involving something that gets them in the Foskey neighborhood. That's just my read on it. I don't know, but you don't.
I don't like
trading
offense for defense. I don't like trading offense for defense. Your defense is already better than your offense. I mean, I thought, what is the deal with Drake Jackson? Isn't that why they drafted him last year? They spent a second-round pick on him. Are they already over Drake Jackson? Are they done with him?
No, I don't think so. I just think that he, he's got to get stronger. And also they like to show up in camp with 15 defensive linemen, and you lose a lot of guys as the year goes on. I just think
how many DNs they've drafted since Lynch has been here? You know how many DNs they've drafted? No. And
0.
One was an outside linebacker.
Three.
Nick Bosa, Peter Tomapino, and Drake Jackson. To me, it's a position they address more in free agency or trade. I think they like to get highly drafted players that teams didn't know what to do with. And then Chris Kosterick unlocks their potential. They don't necessarily look for diamonds in the rough at this position in the draft. Although you're saying they could trade up. I don't like the idea of trading offense for defense on this team.
I hear you. And yet I do think that edge is going to be the priority.
They could do it
out of the weekend.
They could do it. I feel you. You're reading them quite well. They love D-line too much, in my opinion.
They love their D-line. They love, and I just think, who would be the starter? Would it be Drake? Would it be Cleveland Farrell? I was surprised to hear Armstead said that he knows Farrell.
Probably Farrell, and then with Drake Jackson being the third down edge rusher, I would think.
Yeah, to me,
Drake Jackson's thing is he can't set the edge. He couldn't even set the edge in college.
I think, Grant, they're thinking bigger than that. I really do. I think they're thinking bigger than that. And that's why, or Montez Sweat. Both those guys.
He's way better. He's way better than Chase Young.
Chase Young's awesome. Chase Young had that great rookie year.
Was.
All the forced fumbles.
Was.
But then he hasn't played the last couple years. Yeah, and also he makes the most money because of his draft position. I think you got to pay him $17 million. So that's a lot of money. I like Montez Sweat because Montez Sweat, I think, is equally talented, been way healthier. He's been way more consistent. To me, I just think if you're the 49ers and you can show up week 1 with Nick Bosa, Montez Sweat on the edges, and you got Armstead and Hargrave in the middle, I think you can win with a lot of different guys in the secondary if you have that as your front four. So I think they're thinking big on Montez on D end. We'll see.
Yeah, I can see it. Yep. That's their personality as a franchise for sure.
Yeah, if you said what's the over under on D linemen, I would probably set it at 2.5 and go over in this draft. I think they'll come away with 2 or 3 defensive linemen. Maybe not all edge guys, but I think they'll draft at least 3 D linemen.
They definitely draft a lot of D tackles. They definitely do, and you don't really know what to expect from Kinlaw or Kalia Davis. Those are 2 guys who are unknowns. They might want to bring in extra guys. They have all these 7th-round picks who aren't guaranteed to make the roster anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also, the D-line situation for them is interesting from the standpoint of they seem like they have a lot of D tackles right now. I they have obviously Hargrave and obviously Armstead. Those are your starters. But then behind those guys, Kinlaw's still here. Gibbons is here. T.Y. McGill's here. Kalia Davis is here. All those guys. That's 6 deep on your interior. Hyder can play inside in a rotation. That's almost 6.5, 7 deep at D tackle. To me, it's the real need up front is the edge, right? Because you got Bosa, but then what? Drake, Cleveland Farrell, Austin Bryant, Alex Barrett, who was on the practice squad. So they're a little thin.
Well, I thought the Niners were anticipating this last year. Like, hey, Samson Ebukam, Charles Omenihu, they're going to be free agents. We're not going to be able to re-sign them. So let's draft Drake Jackson and get ahead of this. And I guess he was, was he disappointing, or did they just play their vets ahead of him? I feel like Drake Jackson is supposed to step up. I don't know.
I thought he played pretty well, but I
thought he was decent as a pass rusher.
How many passes did he bat down? He batted down a handful of passes.
A bunch.
And I thought he actually showed functional strength when they tried to play him inside in their 4D end, pass rush alignment, which they loved last year. I thought he showed a lot, but if you look at the kid, he definitely could put on upper body, look at him, Ebukam, and then look at Drake. Ebukam
he needs to rebuild his entire body.
Ebukam's just a monster in the upper body, where Drake could put on. Drake looks like a normal guy. Drake looks like just a big, tall, athletic guy.
Drake looks like a t-shirt in the pool guy.
Hulk.
Drake looks like a t-shirt in the pool guy. He does.
T-shirt
I'm sorry.
in the pool guy.
But that was Aaron Banks, and then Aaron Banks totally rebuilt remade his body. So Drake is on you're gonna have to remake your body. But if he does, we've seen Kittle did it. Fred Warner. Go back and look at Fred Warner when he was a rookie. He looked like just a guy. All of a sudden, he came back like the Hulk. So let's see if Drake Jackson can do that. If not, they might go get Foskey.
Yeah, I think they look at Foskey as a plug and play, ready to go guy. So am I hearing this right? That
hold on, you see this from Knees at 138 from Josina Anderson? He gave you a $5 super chat at 138.
Let's see, there it is.
Knees.
Yeah. Josina Anderson reported, as of this hour, no trade is currently anticipated for Lance, as no substantive talks have transpired over the last 72 hours. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely get to that because I want to get your thoughts on that. But I saw some people in the chat saying that Lamar got a deal. Did Lamar get a deal? Did Lamar get a 5-year?
Lamar got extended.
He did get extended.
So it's funny how things happen around the draft. Let's see.
Yep, Lamar. A lot of people saying Lamar got extended. So
sure.
That's okay. So that was one of my questions I was going to ask you. To me, I wake up this morning and there's all this talk about Lamar, and to me, Lynch put that to bed Monday at the presser down in Santa Clara, where he basically said that we can't afford Lamar on our cap. So all the talk. Dan Patrick was talking Lamar. Action Network had a video talking about Trey for Lamar.
Also, I think it's pretty clear that Lamar was never available. The Ravens just re-signed him. They worked it out. They weren't going to let him go.
They just used the rest of the league to do their negotiating because they didn't want to be the
when Jalen Hurts signed, that was pretty. I'm sure whatever Lamar got is very similar to what Jalen Hurts got. I'm guessing.
Bay Area Baller says highest paid player in the NFL is now Lamar.
Okay, so they just took the Jalen Hurts contract and just tweaked it a little bit for. I guarantee that's what happened. Nicole Lynn essentially negotiated both of these. She's Jalen Hurts' agent.
Well, and I'll say this, man. Lamar's coming off 2 just kind of years. 3 years ago, awesome. Last 2 years, not awesome. Only has 1 playoff win. Highest paid player in the NFL? Highest paid player in the NFL? Really?
Greg Roman. He has no wide receivers. He has Greg Roman. I would love to see him on another offense, but I guess we never will. But they got rid of Greg Roman. Now they have Todd Monken. Let's see what happens.
A lot of people wanted to see Lamar with Kyle. It's fun. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Trey Lance because we're now here. I made that prediction. I'll own it one way or another. I still actually believe he'll get moved this weekend. With the fact that Josina Anderson says no substantive talks, I don't think there's going to be any substantive talks.
They could always
really
pick up,
until they're on the clock. Until they're on the clock. Because why? Because Trey's not anybody's first choice. He's plan B. But here's the thing. Look at this draft and look at the quarterbacks. And then you tell me where Trey Lance should go in this draft. Because to me, I'm looking at it and I would say, well, the top 4 quarterbacks are going to come off the board what I'm looking at says they're all going to, that Levis, Richardson, Stroud, and Bryce Young likely to all come off the board in the top 15. So from the 15th pick of round 1 tonight to me, I'd rather have Trey Lance than Hendon Hooker. I'd much rather have Trey Lance than Jake Haener. I'd rather have Trey Lance than Tanner McKee. I'd rather have Trey Lance than basically the rest of the group. So for the rest of the draft, it's likely that Trey Lance will be the best available quarterback from the 15th pick through the end of the draft. So there's some window in there where everybody's going to sit there and look at, well, we could draft Aiden O'Connell or trade for Trey Lance. We could draft Jake Haener or trade for Trey Lance. The question is, do you think the 49ers have put the price tag so in the stratosphere that nobody's going to be calling? Or do you think that the Niners are playing it cool and that they'll move him on the clock to somebody after the top 4 quarterbacks go, but before these other guys go? Because he may be the best quarterback option available between the middle of the first round and really the rest of the draft. I think he's a better option than the rest of the guys.
I don't know about that. I mean,
really?
Maybe if he were
in the
draft, maybe. But here's the way I look at it. Like, he's still played 5 games in the last 3 years. If anyone were in the draft, a quarterback who declared after playing 3 games in 5 years, he would not get picked in the first round. I mean, that's never happened. So it's not his fault that he's in that position, but also he's on a contract. If you trade for him, you have to pay him almost $4 million this year and almost $5 million next year, and then you got to figure out the 5th-year option. You got to figure that out after this year. So his contract sucks. You don't have him for that long. He has a broken ankle, and he hasn't played in a long time. Like that, you compare him to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Like, yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was never going to be the 3rd pick in the draft, but Dorian Thompson-Robinson has played 5 years in a row, and he never broke his ankle, and you get him for 4 years, and it's about $1 million a year because you get him in round 3. Like, there's a lot of reasons to not take the Trey Lance project. You don't get that much time with him.
Do you like DTR more than Trey Lance?
It's easier. It's safer. You get him later in the draft. Like, the whole Lance thing, you're betting on the Niners being wrong. You only have 2 years to prove him wrong. He's rather expensive for a guy. I mean, like, Hendon Hooker played last year. Hendon Hooker has 2 years of playing really well back-to-back. Trey Lance hasn't played an extended season since 2019. I really wonder what his value is. Again, if he were in the draft this year, he might get picked in round 1 or 2. He might get picked in round 1 or 2, although it's so unusual to have a guy who hasn't played in 3 years. I just can't
all the factors, the injury, the contract, the limited time that you have available to evaluate him, factor in all of that. Where would you pick
tell me a guy
draft?
who got picked in round 1 after playing 5 games in 3 years? Show me in the history of the NFL. Show me that. Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So,
no,
I mean,
it's not a familiar path, that's for sure.
That's why I feel like the situation right now isn't that like teams are calling the Niners off the hook and the Niners are really driving a hard bargain. I feel like there's not a market for Trey, and it's because he hasn't played.
Well, the question is this. I personally think that from the middle of the first through all of the second, all of the third, if I'm the 49ers, I'd probably be, if you're willing to trade him at all, and it sounds like they are based on all the things they've said, wouldn't you take a 2nd or 3rd round pick? I would. You're saying you don't think they're going to get that offer.
I don't think they're going to get that
What
offer.
round pick? Somebody's going to call at some, if they don't move him. They haven't moved him in round 2. We're now in round 3. We're tomorrow night, 7:30, 7:45. He hasn't been moved. Now you're after round 3. Is their phone going to ring Friday night with a trade? And are they going to pull the trigger on a trade? What if Commanders call you after day 2, Grant, and say, you know what? We'll give you Montez Sweat and a 5th round pick. Will they do that? Or will they say, no. We think yes, we want to move them and we'll shop them, but we're not going to get ripped off, and that's ripping us off because Sweat's a free agent next year. Or would they say, you know what? Montez Sweat in the 5th, boom, deal. You got a quarterback. What's your
I
guess?
think they might take Montez Sweat, but I don't think the Commanders are going to offer Montez Sweat for Trey Lance.
You know.
But if they do, sure. Montez Sweat's a hell of a player. He could be a Pro Bowler on the 49ers.
Oh, I mean,
Like,
he could be
that's
special.
the thing. Like, if you trade Trey Lance, they're going to have to sell it to the fans like, hey, sorry about the future, but this is going to make the team better right now. And trading Trey Lance for a third-round pick doesn't make the team better right now. You already have three third-round picks. And frankly, have you seen their record of drafting in round 3? It's disgusting, other than Fred Warner. So you got to get someone like Montez Sweat or Chase Young back if you're trading Trey Lance. And I don't think you could get Montez Sweat, but I do think you could get Chase Young because he has 1.5 sacks in the last 2 years. But would you rather roll the dice on a DN with a bum knee or a quarterback with 4 starts? I'll take the quarterback because he's a quarterback.
It really is interesting because why would I mention Montez Sweat and Chase Young? Because think about what Trey Lance is. He's an asset that could be worth a lot, or he could be worth nothing because it's very speculative. And when you're looking at those guys, you'd say, well, the 49ers might be able to convince the fans they got a fair trade because those guys have big names, and you could argue they could help you win now, and they're at a position of need. But in reality, what are you getting? You're getting 1 year of Montez Sweat. You're getting, 1 year of Chase Young, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 2?
Yeah.
So you're not getting – those guys are free agents at the end of the year, and if all you got were that guy in a 5th or something like that, how much is that? But the Niners could argue, hey, we're going for it, man. We're putting together the best defensive line in football, and we're going for it this year. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all shakes out. I mean,
Look, the Niners have a million different stories, but Jed York did say at the owners' meetings that he thinks Trey still can be great and that it's not his fault that he hasn't achieved it and that he's gotten injured. So I don't know if John Lynch feels that because he has a whole different story, and I don't know if Kyle feels that, but Jed is the owner of the team. I'm sure he wanted Trey Lance, and for him to greenlight a trade, he's going to have to feel like, you're trading someone that he said he thinks can still be great. So it can't be a 3rd-round pick. It's got to be someone like Montez Sweat who could be great on the 49ers or another asset that you could sell as someone who could be great down the line. Otherwise, don't do it.
It's interesting that was your take because my take on hearing Jed say that was Jed's looking for a return. He's talking him up, looking for a trade return on Trey. I viewed it that way. It's interesting.
I
different
looked at
perspectives.
him as him being frustrated. I mean, I think he felt that Jimmy Garoppolo could be special, and that's why they paid him like $140 million. And he ended up not being special. And then I think when they traded up to number 3, it came down to Mac Jones or Trey Lance. I'm thinking Jed wanted Trey and not Mac and probably put a vote in for Trey. And to see him get kind of like shipped off after 4 starts must be a little frustrating for the owner who spent 3 first-round picks on him. I can see it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it plays like, hey, you know what? Brock's our guy because he also stated that. But we think Trey's going to be really good. Like, give us something significant for him. Like, that was Jed's angle to try to see if they can get more in a trade. We'll find out. We're going to find out very shortly what their price tag is. Here's maybe the question that I think I've wanted to ask you for a while. Does finding, I think everybody would admit that Brock Purdy was obviously a great pick as Mr. Irrelevant, whether you think he's going to be a franchise quarterback
of all time.
Yeah, I mean, whether you think he's going to be a superstar or if you just think he was a great pick in the 7th round, everybody would acknowledge that was a great pick
in the 7th round
by the Niners. Does that, finding that Mr. Irrelevant round 7 gem, cancel out the blowing of 3 first-round picks and 1 third-round pick on Trey Lance if indeed they part ways and go in a different direction? Is the Purdy success and let's say the Lance failure, if it winds up being a failure, is that a wash?
I mean, that would be projecting deep into the future. He hasn't. No, I mean, not. He would have to be a franchise quarterback. He would have to be franchise quarterback. He'd have to be, someone worth trading up 3 first-round picks for. Like, he'd have to be Kurt Warner or Tom Brady or whoever. Like, he'd have to be a Hall of Famer. And I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be that. He got hurt after 8 starts. He may just be like another Niners backup quarterback who does really well and gets hurt. We'll see. But when they traded up for Trey Lance, they said they needed someone transcendent. And now they're falling back on, actually, we just need a guy who can sort of run our system. I don't know. I mean, think about how much better they would be right now if they didn't trade Trey Lance. Like, that's always going to haunt them. Even if they have Brock Purdy, that's 3 years worth of first-round picks that
if they didn't trade up, they didn't trade for
like
him. You're saying
you could have had so much more on your team to help Brock Purdy.
you could have had Jamar Chase. Could have had Kyle Pitts. Yeah.
Or you could have stayed at 12 and, had Micah Parsons and then had the next year's first-round pick. Like, they're drafting Trey Lance today. Again, you could have had more. So I still think it's going to be something that follows them and haunts them. I guess if they win a Super Bowl, no one will care.
To me, this one's interesting because I just think that it's obviously an incredible move when you get Brock Purdy, but blowing 3 1s and a 3 on a swing and a miss, Brock Purdy, you'd have to win the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy to make swinging and missing and using that much draft capital to get up to swing and miss, if that's indeed the case.
You'd have to keep him healthy too. Like,
you got to
win the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. But Nick Foles was never a franchise quarterback. He could play well in spurts, but he could never really stay healthy for that long. Like, you got to not, because I think the Niners and the Eagles are so similar. They both have these crazy good rosters, and you could put a lot of quarterbacks on their team, and they would look really good. So I think it's tough sometimes to look at the numbers, and they're great, but you have to also use your eyes and sort of understand the context of where they're playing. Like, nothing against Brock Purdy, but for 4 weeks before he was on the field, Jimmy Garoppolo was winning and playing well too. Like, what if Jimmy Garoppolo hadn't gotten hurt? What would his numbers have been down the stretch? What would Trey Lance's numbers have been down the stretch if he hadn't gotten hurt and he were playing with Christian McCaffrey? Like, those are fair things to wonder. What would Brock Purdy have looked like if he had played for the Carolina Panthers last year like Sam Darnold had to do? Would we be talking about him at all? Or would he just be another guy? I don't know. We'll find out.
I personally think Brock would have had success, in other spots, because I think what he's about is timing, tempo, accuracy. He's playing the position at a high level. As far as the Niners, it sucks because we didn't get to see Trey with McCaffrey. We did get to see Jimmy with McCaffrey, and they barely beat the Saints, and they beat them 13-0.
That's true.
I mean, they averaged 33 a game with Brock Purdy. All right, here we go. How about Brandon Aiyuk? I mean, is the deal of is dealing Brandon Aiyuk, you think, still a possibility, or did Lynch put that to bed on Monday in Santa Clara as well? And I bring this up because I'm reading some article here online about the teams that people are saying may be in line, 4 teams that may be in line to trade for Brandon Aiyuk tonight, and they list the Texans, the Chargers, the New York Giants, and the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts I get. The Chargers I get, the Texans I get. I don't get sending him to a team that's not only just an NFC team, probably the number 1 team outside of Philly that is really building something is Brian Daboll and the New York Giants. Why give them a young, emerging, outstanding young receiver?
They won't. They might send him to the AFC. They might.
You think they might trade
AFC.
him?
But I mean, again, like, to trade him, you would have to sell it to fans like, hey, we didn't want to trade Aiyuk, but this makes our team better right now. Can you really sell that? Like, who could you get? Like, maybe if they get, who's the tight end from Iowa, Laporta?
Matt Laporta.
They get him. Maybe they could say, hey, you know what? We kind of want to be a 2 tight end offense. This guy's special. Like, or if they get a starting right tackle, or, like, to your point, a starting DN, like someone that they can say, like, look, this guy, we love Aiyuk, but this guy's going to be a starter for us right away, and we need this guy. He's going to make us better. Otherwise, I don't see how you can sell it to your fan base. Fan base will be pissed. And it'll be a bad move because he's really good and frankly underused.
How do you sell it? You sell it like what you were saying a month ago. You can't pay everybody. Look at the Chiefs. They only extend great players. Is Aiyuk great, or is he really good? I think he's really good.
He's better than Debo.
I don't know that he's great, though. Is he great? I think he's better long-term than Debo, but not in the eyes of Shanahan, he's not. Shanahan likes Debo because Debo's a tone setter, this and that. But I agree as far as who's going to be better in the future.
There's 3 phases for a wide receiver, right?
I think Aiyuk's better in the future.
There's 3 phases for a wide receiver, right? Before the catch, at the catch, after the catch. Debo's the best after the catch. Before the catch, the route running, Aiyuk. At Definitely the catch, Aiyuk. Catching the ball, Aiyuk. So, 2 of the 3 phases I'll give to Aiyuk. And then after the catch, it's not like Aiyuk's a slouch. I mean, Debo is so one-dimensional. He's practically a running back now. Forget wide back. What is his route tree now, Larry?
To me, though, there's 4 or 5 guys on your team every year that you think are true tone setters. And you need as many of those guys as possible. I think Debo's a physical tone setter, but I hear you.
Yeah, he is.
He's not. He's not a route runner. He's an ordinary route runner. He runs everything within 5-10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Where he's dangerous is as a runner, and on these hitches or these quick slants. When you're playing ball control though in cold weather, and it's nice to have him because he'll run over you, he'll catch the ball. He seems to be pretty reliable. They handed it to him when the game was on the line against Green Bay and they were trying to put it away, right? So I mean that to me is defining. But I agree.
Samuel
Aiyuk's
actually
got a
missed
better
a bunch
future.
of games. Do you remember that Debo Samuel actually missed like 3 games down the stretch? And the
Total
in that
season-
stretch, I mean,
What did Aiyuk
he
do?
missed? I mean, I'm just saying the offense without him. They scored 21 in Seattle. They scored 37 against Washington. They scored 37 against the Raiders. Like, I feel like now that they have McCaffrey, they don't need Debo anymore. Like the trio of McCaffrey, Kittle, and Aiyuk is what does that?
There's
not
a little
give you?
redundancy there for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
like, you got everything, and with Jennings too. Like, damn, and all of a sudden you're trying to shoehorn Debo Samuel to the front of the line because you gave him all this money. He has to get all these targets. When frankly, he drops a lot of them. His route tree's a little. And as a running back, there's like 4 guys I'd rather hand the ball off to right now than him. You don't even need him to play running back anymore.
What do you make of their receiving core going into this draft? I mean, let's talk about it. Most teams, especially on this team, because they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks. So and they got a bunch of tight ends, and they got a bunch of running backs, and they got a fullback. So this team's likely to want to carry 5 wide receivers. Right now, they have Debo, Jennings, Aiyuk, Gray, Ray McLeod, Tay Martin, who I love as a young prospect. They've got Chris Conley, who's not just a camp body. He's way more than that. They just re-signed Willie Snead. They've looked at 5, 6, 7 receivers or more in this draft. Maybe it's just due diligence. What do you make of? I mean, to me, it seems like what is the game plan for making a trade? Establish a surplus, trade off your surplus. That's how it's done. Is that what we're seeing before our eyes? They're establishing a wide receiver surplus, and they're going to trade off of it with Aiyuk in this draft?
I don't know. I mean, I don't. How many wide receivers are as good as Brandon Aiyuk in this draft right now? Is there any wide receiver in this draft?
Personally,
who's
maybe
as good as Brandon
Addison.
Aiyuk right now.
I like
Maybe.
Addison from USC, the Pittsburgh kid.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's about it. I mean,
also, my
seriously,
question is what's the plan with Danny Gray? They drafted him in round 3 last year. He didn't play very much. Are they done with him? Is he another guy who's getting shipped off?
Yeah, well, I don't think he's getting shipped. No, I think, hey, if you talk to Kyle, they love him. Why do they love him? Because he serves a purpose. He can run off the coverage. You got to have one guy who can run by somebody. Otherwise, everybody just doesn't play you the same way. He's the guy who can run by.
I don't see the Niners drafting a wide receiver high. They drafted Danny Gray last year. They didn't give him a chance. Assuming they still like him, I could see them taking like a gadget guy like Ray in round 5, kind of like a slot returner, since you're not going to re-sign Ray in a year. And then I could see him drafting a guy like Juwan Jennings in round 7 because he's going to be a free agent next year, and that's where you got Jennings. So I could see the Niners being like, instead of giving Jennings too much money because of the production that we created for him, let's just get the next Jennings. And I trust that they can find the next Jennings.
If they decided they didn't want to pay Aiyuk $14 million on the 5th-year extension, and they used the draft. That was another weird thing about that presser last week. They used the draft like, oh, of course we're going to wait till after the draft. But in past years, they've exercised the 5th-year option going into the draft.
Yeah, there was no explanation for that.
There was no explanation. It's like, we're just going to wait till after the draft. We're going to wait till after the draft. I personally think that Kinlaw and Aiyuk both are available this weekend if you want to come with the right price. For Aiyuk, I think that price is going to be a late first-round pick. For Kinlaw, I think it could be any pick, probably in the first 6 rounds. And I do believe there's a chance they move both. What do you think about that?
A better thing to do with Kinlaw is to trade him for a player, because Kinlaw, it could be
or
a pick swap
that
in
you
round
turn
7.
into his replacement. They worked out that DeAndre Coburn. No, I mean, maybe trade him for a 5th-round pick, Grant, or a 6th, and then turn around and then.
You think you're getting a 5th for Javon Kinlaw? A 5th?
Probably a 6th. I would think he's a 6th-round pick. You don't think he's worth anything? 7th?
I don't think so, man. I don't
8th?
think so.
Oh, there's no
the knee. It's not him. It's the knee. Team's going to want to know about the knee. I mean, he might not be in the league much longer.
I know. He was so bad in the playoffs.
Was he one of the Niners' 53 best players the last 2 years? Is he one of the 53 best players on a team right now? Don't know. Because of the knee. So I don't know what his trade value is. But if you want to take a chance and there's someone that you were about to cut because of their knee. Why don't you just flip them? Let's do that.
I know. Well, that's what I was
Chase
thinking.
Young.
Maybe the
Chase Young.
Oh,
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Well, you're not getting them
Knee for
straight
knee.
up, but could you imagine that? Well, who knows? I mean, I was thinking Mekhi Becton. The Jets' offensive tackle.
There you go. There you
that
go.
you need
Something
a right
like that.
tackle. He's got
Something
bum
like that.
knees.
Yep. There you go.
What do you make of the fact that the 49ers' history under Lynch and Shanahan is that they are hitting on day 3? They landed Kittle in round 5, DJ Jones in round 6, Juwan Jennings was a late round pick, and then after the draft, Mostert, Aziz, Kevin Givens, several. Heck, Brock Purdy in the 7th round. Why do the Niners kick such butt in day 3 and after the draft? And really, it's kind of almost like a 50% hit rate on day 1 and day 2. Why? Is there a reason for it?
Because Kyle doesn't make those picks. You
think that's it?
Guess. Yes, absolutely. I think Kyle and probably his dad have way too much say in rounds 1, 2, and 3. And I think they probably overrule the scouts. And because what John Lynch, you were there, he was asked this question the other day, and he said, well, it's because we really collaborate well on day 3. We got the front office and the scouts and the coaches challenging each other, talking, as opposed to days 1, 2, and days 1 and 2, where Kyle is the head coach and he gets what he wants. I think that's very interesting. I think that's what, look at the people they've drafted in round 3, just round 3. Akello Witherspoon, Ambry Thomas,
Jalen Hurd,
CJ Beathard. Trey Sermon, Ty Davis Price. Where do these guys come from? For a team
not only that,
if you
isolate it even more, look at a lot of these busts are offensive picks. Dante Pettis, CJ Beathard, Joe Williams, Jalen Hurd.
Yeah, man, very strange. It's like they're so out of character for the picks that they make on day 3, which are so disciplined and researched. On day 3, it's like, you really knew these. Like, where did you find this guy? But on day 2, it's like, did you watch this guy for an hour on film and see one good game and decide, oh yeah, Ty Davis Price was good against Florida one time, let's draft him in round 3? Like, it's so strange. That's my best
reasoning
theory
on that.
Yeah.
I don't. It's got to be different methodologies. That's all I got to say. It can't be the same. It can't be the same. They got to be doing something different at the top of the draft. And maybe they're, this year, was it this year for the first time they didn't bring the coaching staff to the combine?
I think last year too.
They didn't. Okay.
Last year too. Yeah.
And maybe that's a distinction. Maybe that's it. It's like, hey, you know what? We're not going to incorporate the coaching staff. Maybe incorporating the coaching staff in the 11th hour starts to work against you because guys develop their favorites and it's not based on a whole lot as opposed to the scouts. I don't know. I don't know what the theory is.
What if they're like, hey, Kyle, why don't you trade all your picks for Christian McCaffrey so you don't get to make any picks? Maybe if they're like, hey, man, since you don't know jack about college football, why don't you just trade the picks for vets, man? You know the NFL. So if you want to spend the picks on players, spend it on Christian McCaffrey because you don't know college football. You don't watch it.
Well, and also, hey, you could make a strong, compelling argument that the Rams won the Super Bowl using that philosophy. Like, hey, man, we've screwed up all these high picks. Let's just trade them all for Jalen Ramsey. Let's just trade them all for Matthew Stafford. They got 5-6 guys who are as good as they gets in the league, and they won the Super Bowl, and now they're in cap hell. The Niners have gone the depth route.
If you know Kyle's just going to step in at the end and be like, draft Danny Gray in round 3 because I said so, then like, dude, just tell him to trade the pick for McCaffrey. Don't let him do that. If you know he's going to just draft CJ Beathard at the last minute, three rounds too early, like highly encourage him to trade that pick for anyone that's in the NFL.
Or better yet, if you just don't want to risk it, if you just want to say, you know what, this is not just the Niners, this is just the risk factor in taking 3rd round picks, then fine. Then go trade your 3rd round pick and go get a Montez Sweat and don't take a chance in a draft that has edge rushers that are going to come off the board in every round.
What you don't want to do, though, is trade a bunch of 1st round picks for a guy who played 1 year in FCS football. You trade multiple 1st round picks for NFL players. Honestly, that's the lesson we learned the last few years.
Well, and it will be interesting to see if they do draft a quarterback. Do you think they'll draft a quarterback in this draft? Because to me, if they draft a quarterback and that quarterback is more like Brock Purdy from the standpoint of experience. I think that's going to be their kind of their reasoning. It's like, hey, you know what? We went with an inexperienced guy. We took a wild stab. It didn't work out. But now we believe in experience at quarterback, and that's why we like Clayton Tune and Jake Hayner and DTR and Max Duggan, because these guys have all played a ton and they have experience. And experience means everything.
Matters. I think experience matters. I don't see how they overlooked that in the first place with Trey Lance. I mean, but anyway,
there's a lot of one-year starters who bust at quarterback.
Why would you not take a quarterback with at least the last pick? I mean, pick 255. Why would you not take after all the success you had with a quarterback the rest of the league didn't want? You could probably find either Max Duggan or Stetson Bennett. I feel like Stetson Bennett could do a lot of what Brock Purdy did. I mean, I've seen him play. He can throw on the run, rolling left, rolling right. For a little guy, he's got a nice little deep ball. He can move a little bit. I mean, you give him what the Niners have, I'm sure he could hold down the fort for a month. There's plenty of guys the Niners could draft in round 7 who could hold it down. And I just wonder if they're going to, if Kyle, who's going to be picking all 3 picks in round 3, I think, is going to fall in love with someone and take like Jake Hayner and pick 102. Because
Stetson Bennett actually looked freaking great at the combine. He's small. He's 5'11", Grant, but
he is. But so is Bryce Young.
Yeah. No, it's
and he's
seriously.
old, but so is Hendon Hooker. Like there's so many things. I mean,
old is. I wouldn't. There's people
I don't
who
care
cite
old.
Yeah,
I don't care.
A lot of these guys are going to be old because of COVID.
COVID.
That's the reason a lot of these guys are old. And that doesn't matter. Who cares? The Niners drafted Pierce Holt. Go ask your dad how good Pierce Holt was. He was like 28 when they drafted him. Who cares? He was a great player.
Also, if you want experienced quarterbacks, then you're going to get 23, 24-year-old. Like, what's wrong with that?
Right.
I'd rather have a guy come out when he's ready than come out when he's not ready.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Because, I mean, the whole thing with Brock is that the first impression matters. It does.
Oh, I mean,
it really does.
And there's things that you learn under playing that you just don't learn from just practice reps. And it's pretty clear at this point. And there's a lot of one-year guys like Mitchell Trubisky and others who, they look good. They were one-year starters and it didn't work out. I'm not saying Trey. I actually believe in Trey.
Trubisky's another one.
I just think Trey needs to get on the field right now.
The NFL
and I don't think he's going to get on the field right now.
League. It's not a developmental league. And the way, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't understand college football that much, but now that this transfer portal allows you to pretty much change schools immediately, and now that you can get paid in college, what is the reason to leave school early if you're a quarterback with like 500 career throws? Why?
Just because you're not a student and you don't want to be on campus. Well, otherwise,
to me, that's a red flag. Like, why are you so quick to leave? You haven't accomplished anything yet. You could get money. You could stay and learn. But are you trying to cash in now? Is that the most important thing for you to cash in at 20? I'm not saying that's what Trey was thinking, but I just feel like Anthony Richardson, for example, why did he leave school? Why? Because
somebody told some agent got in his corner, got in his ear, and said, "Hey, man, you're going to be top 15." And you know what? But yeah, you're right because they're shortchanging
themselves. Get him some NIL money. Get him some NIL money,
and you're shortchanging your career.
Yes, you are. You really are. Transfer to USC, get yourself some NIL money. It's not that. Come on, don't just declare for the draft and say, "Oh, now I got drafted by some piece of crap team that gives up on me after a year when I wasn't ready." And then you're Sam Darnold. Then you're Trey Lance.
And you know what? We're going to sound hypocritical, but to me, it's different for different positions. For quarterback, you need the reps. But if you're a running back, you don't need that mileage on your body. Come out as fast as you can and get that money. But for quarterbacks, get the knowledge. I'm Bob Dole, says Grant Cohn will be holding Shanny's pocket in prison. I'm not sure what that means. Also, love you guys. LOL.
Do I have to? Why am I in prison?
I don't know, but it's a very dark chat there. Glass half full guy. What would it take to get Chase Young or Montez Sweat? Would one take less draft picks? I'd take a flyer on either. What do you think, Grant? Who's got more value? Sweat's been healthier. Young was the second pick in the draft and thought to be basically his draft year's version of Bosa. So who's Young was drafted way higher, but Young also tore the ACL. And I saw stats yesterday that since the ACL injury, he's barely played. But when he did play, he had a sack percentage that would have ranked him 88th out of 137 edge rushers, according to Pro Football Focus. So he hasn't produced since the injury, but the guy is a freaking stud if he's healthy. I mean, he might be one of your best defensive players. What do you think? Are those guys available? You think they'd make a move for them? Do you see that or no?
He has Chase Young has 1.5 sacks in the last 2 years. He didn't just tear his ACL; he tore his patellar tendon too. I'll pass.
Really?
Montez
Okay.
Sweat is a very good player. I've always respected Montez Sweat since he came out of college. I think if the Niners got Montez Sweat, that would be a game changer. I just don't understand why he's available in the first place. Like, why is someone that good at such a critical position on the block? What did he do? Did he say something to Ron Rivera? Did he look at someone the wrong? What is wrong with Montez? He's a great player. He's a hell of a player.
All I'll say that I can make sense of that is, and I don't know their exact cap situation, but I did read a note this morning or yesterday that said that every single defensive end on their roster is a free agent this offseason.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and I will say this. I could see why they would be willing to make a move there because they got so much money tied up in their D-line, and even without Chase Young, their D-line kicked ass. So maybe they don't need Chase Young. I would love Montez Sweat. To me, too, if you're the 49ers and you want to hide that you're not getting real big-time value for Trey Lance, trading for one of those guys is probably the best way to do that. Yeah. Why? Because those guys are free agents at the end of the year. So their value is actually less than their name. And the public will be like, Montez Sweat and a 5th-round pick, awesome. But in reality, it's 1 year of Montez Sweat and a 5th-round pick. So it will create headlines where Niner fans will be, we're going for it, it's exciting, and this and that. But in reality, your value is more speculative or lesser, far less than what you traded to invest.
If they get Montez Sweat for Trey Lance, that would be amazing. And also it would show, I think fans would understand, like, look, we're giving up on potential for the future, but this is a serious play for right now. Javon Hargrave and Montez Sweat, oh my God, that's serious. Yeah, that's a big deal if they do that.
3rd string All-Pro. You knew it was coming. Does Montez Sweat. All right. Just ridiculous. Do you now? You know me. I'm a draft nerd, but you're not. And I watch a lot of your stuff, and you dabble in it. You know the names, but you don't. You're not a deep dive draft guy, self-admitted. But you've watched a number of players by now. It's the 27th of April. Do you have any player at any position going into this draft that you would say, "Damn, you know what? Based on what I've seen, I really like that player, and I would love to see him here in San Francisco." Is there any player that you've seen on the board at any spot that you're like, man, would be nice to see the Niners get that guy?
Well, I think the interesting one is the offensive tackles that are going to be available. Where they pick, like,
You're starting to crackle again. I don't know.
Blake, I'm starting to crackle again.
Yeah, I don't know. You just in the last 1 second, 2 seconds.
I felt like you were crackling a little bit too.
Was I?
Crackle. Yeah.
We've been taken over by the cracklers.
What's going on? Hold on. Is that better now? Am I still crackling?
No.
Crashing. It's better?
It looks like a nice mic,
I think it's a StreamYard issue. All right, let me know. I'm curious about the offensive tackles. Blake Freeland, Jalen Duncan, Tyler Steen. Those 3 guys, like, are the Niners going to take one of those guys? I like Tyler Steen the most. He played at Alabama. He's a really good athlete. Played on the left side. Played on the right side. Curious to see if they take him. I think that's the most important thing. They need to address this offensive line. Stop being casual about it. That's what I'm focused on, offensive tackles. I think they're probably going to end up taking some guy probably in round 7. Probably. Some guy with traits, you know what I mean? Like, they're probably going to end up taking Roschon Johnson, running back out of Texas, in round 3. But
I can see that. I could see Roschon because Kyle went to Texas. I could see that kid Overshone from DeMarvion Overshone from Texas. Kyle loves his Texas guys. He went to Texas. Okay, couple last ones and we'll let you go because you crackled a little bit very very much at the end there. Niner needs. Last year, we thought the Niners needed a safety. They went into the draft. They didn't draft a safety. They obviously didn't feel they needed a safety. This year, if there was one takeaway from that presser, Grant, for me, it was that John really likes Feliciano, and he really talked up Nick Zakel's offseason. So, and I think they really like, and I saw a piece that Barrows wrote in The Athletic where Barrows was suggesting the Niners like Colton McKivitz as a pass protector more than Mike McGlinchey. I could see that. I kind of like that. I like him there as well. I think he's better than Mike McGlinchey at pass pro. Is there a need? Is O-line as big a need as we think? Is there a spot, or I guess maybe, how about this? Finish the sentence. The one position that the Niners absolutely must address in this draft, or in your mind, it's been a bad draft.
Offensive tackle.
So you believe in that? You believe in the offensive tackle?
I do. I don't understand why the Niners feel like defensive line is by far the most important position in the league. I don't understand that philosophy. Like, you can use platoons on the D-line. No one on your D-line has to play 100% of the snaps. In fact, they shouldn't. The best D-lines have guys coming in waves. Like, offensive linemen have to play 100% of the snaps, and it's really hard to find good ones. And the Niners aren't particularly good at finding good ones. I don't know. I feel like it's an offensive league, and we see the best way to support a quarterback is not through defense. It's through an offensive line. Like Patrick Mahomes, what does he need? All he needs is an offensive line and a tight end. Other than that, give him a decent defense and a few weapons at running back on their rookie deal, and he'll win the Super Bowl. But if you take away a couple of his offensive linemen, he's not going to win the Super Bowl. Can't do it. We saw it. And I feel like the Niners don't get that. They have about half an offensive line, but they haven't really had a strong right side ever under Kyle Shanahan, and I feel like that is such an oversight.
I'm going to go defensive end. I just think they lost 700 snaps with those 3 DNs they lost, and I like Drake Jackson as a guy, but they need some serious defensive end speed rushers, some guys to scare people off opposite Bosa. That to me is the spot. You got to get, to me, I'll put the over-under at like 2.5, and I'd go over. They need defensive linemen. Robert Jorgensen says Michael Mayer is the one guy I'd love to see in Niners gear. That I agree with him. To me, if there's one guy that I would love to see outside of Foskey, it's Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. That being said, let's finish up with this. What do you think of Kittle? He's 30. How many more years does Kittle have here? Will they draft his replacement in this draft?
I feel like with tight end, they've never drafted a tight end before round 5. So, I mean, they could take one in round 3, but they've never done that before. Kittle was a 5th-round pick. I could see them taking a guy in round 5 or round 6 with traits and hoping. But it just seems so hard to replace George Kittle. Like, how many George Kittles are there? How do you draft another George Kittle? The whole league is looking for the next George Kittle. If they think he's the next George Kittle, he's a top 20 pick. I don't see how they do that.
I know.
It's easier to find the next Brandon Aiyuk than the next George Kittle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded tight end draft, but I don't see George Kittle in this draft. But I love Michael Mayer, and if they could wind up getting Michael Mayer, and I've actually seen Michael Mayer fall to round 2. If they could get a high 2 and get Michael Mayer, I think Mayer and Kittle would be an incredible 2 tight end set. All right, man, where are you going to be for the draft? What do you do? What's your routine? Will you stream live?
I'm going to go down to Santa Clara. I'm going to go down to Santa Clara just in case they make a move. They're not supposed to have any interview tonight, but I'm going to go just in case they do something. Because then they'll talk, so I'll be there, and I'll figure out what's wrong with my microphone in the meantime.
They will talk down there tonight if they do
something. But so far they're scheduled not to do something, so we'll see what happens.
All right, man. Good stuff. Thanks for all the help on the channel, man. It's been an incredible year. No, that's all right. Heck, you can't control that.
You're doing great,
dude. I'm loving it, and check out your stuff all the time, and you're kicking butt and taking names. Where you got 65,000? Where are you at now?
63 something, 63 plus. I'm chugging away.
Just keep on plugging. Keep on plugging. All right, man. Hey, thanks for the time. Have a great one.
Have a good one. See you around.
Go. The great Grant Cohn stopping by on the Krug Show leading into the draft. Too bad on his mic right there, because his mic definitely was crackling. Some people pushing back on Grant. Don't push back on Grant. Grant has been a really good guy to me. And he's helped me in a lot of ways. So, but today his mic obviously was not great. We'll hit a couple on the chat here. Tony Nagatani says, trade up for Sam Laporta or take Will Mallory. Okay. You like the tight end spot. I mean, there's no question tight end is going to be a spot they look at. I'm throwing out Michael Mayer because I just think Michael Mayer is one of the most, for sure, solid tight ends I've seen come into the draft in a long time. I think he had 9 touchdowns this year. Guy's a red zone threat. He's a blocker. He's just a horse. He's a blue chip tight end. I think he's got a better athletic profile than Dalton Kincaid. I think he's got better ball skills than Darnell Washington. I think he's a better athlete, better movement guy than Sam Laporta. I kind of like Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State and Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan as well. down the board. And way down the board, Payne Durham from Purdue. I'm a huge fan of Payne Durham. And to me, the one guy, if you said, is there a sleeper tight end? It's like, well, what do they need at tight end? Do they need a blocker? Well, they got Kittle. Warner's kind of known as a blocker. What they really need is another threat, another passing threat, another receiving threat, I should say, in there. And to me, the guy that's so intriguing is the Stanford wide receiver, Elijah Higgins. Elijah Higgins is a great athlete. He's 235. Use him as a flex tight end. Put 10 pounds of muscle on him and use him as a flex tight end. You get Elijah Higgins and George Kittle on the field together with Brock Purdy throwing to the tight ends the way he throws to the tight ends. I think Higgins could be significantly better in the pros than he was at Stanford. And at Stanford, I mean, they played slow. They ran the ball a ton. Greg Escon says Higgins is a fifth rounder. Yeah. I mean, maybe even later. He might be later than that. He might be more like a sixth rounder. But Elijah Higgins, to me, that one. And the other one is the Eastern Kentucky tight end. I think his name is Dak Allen, who was a converted quarterback at Eastern Kentucky. And then he went to the Eastern Kentucky Pro Day, and he put up 25 reps of 225, which showed that, he's got unbelievable strength. That would have ranked number one, by the way, among all tight ends at the Combine. This kid didn't get invited to the Combine because he hurt his leg late in the year, and I'm not even sure if he'll be ready right away. But I watched the film on that kid. He's got great ball skills and terrific hands, very strong. Obviously, it's a different caliber of competition at Eastern Kentucky than it is in the NFL. But as far as seventh round pick, that makes sense. Raymond Martinez says, Larry, no more projects, please. How many successful position conversions have the 49ers had recently? A lot. A lot. Have you heard of Fred Warner? Fred Warner was not a linebacker at BYU. He was kind of a rover. He was almost like he was more of a safety than a linebacker. He's a linebacker. Have you heard of Marcelino McCrary Ball? Marcelino McCrary Ball went to college as a corner. Then he played safety at Indiana. The Niners drafted him as a linebacker. And by, I would say, September, you guys are going to be calling up saying how great Marcelino McCrary Ball is. I didn't know how good he was. He's good. He's really good. Why do you think they let Azeez Al-Shaair walk? Because they got him. So there are guys who convert. What do you think Joe Staley was? Joe Staley wasn't a tackle. Joe Staley was a tight end who went to Central Michigan, converted to tackle a couple of years while there. I mean, there's all kinds of conversions, and sometimes you can find the greatest value. Antonio Gates was a basketball player. That kid Julius Thomas, who was a Denver tight end, was a basketball player. They became incredible tight ends. So it happens all around the league. There's running backs that convert to wide receiver. There's all kinds of conversions, and it does actually. The Niners have had more than their fair share. And we go through their roster. I could probably point out 2 or 3 more guys who converted from one position to another position. There's a guy in this draft named Carlton Martial, who is a 5'9", 210-pound linebacker who led the nation in tackles. Now, I don't think, is he Sam Mills? Maybe. He's literally, if you watch the film, he's amazing. All I'll say is if there's one film that you should spend 5 minutes going on YouTube and watching, it's Carlton Martial from Troy. Mr. Joe says Staley was a tackle already coming out of college. He was a tackle coming out of college, but he started in college as a tight end. There's all kinds of transitions. Now Raymond's backtracking. Post-college successful conversions for the 49ers, Larry. Not in college. All right. Now I got to go to the line. Now I got to go dust off the depth chart and go through it. And there's guys. Poe, the kid Poe that's in for the Niners right now. Jason Poe. Jason Poe played fullback. He converted. So there are guys. There's this kid from UCLA, Antonio Maffei, was playing defensive line a couple years ago. He's one of my favorite offensive linemen in this draft. There's guys switch positions. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens a lot. You see it a lot on defense right now, where guys who are secondary guys are now linebackers. And that's just the way it is. Demetrius Flanagan Fowles, right there. Played at Arizona. What did he play at Arizona? He played safety. What was he playing for the Niners? He's playing linebacker. So that those guys stand out. The biggest conversions, I think, are from, what you're seeing a lot now is you're seeing a lot of 220 to 225 pound linebackers, where they used to be like Matt Millen with a big neck roll and they weighed 250, 260. Now linebackers are like 220 because it's a speed game, it's a sub-package game, it's a passing game, and you got to have mobility. Anyway, I just named a couple. All right. As far as the draft, we wanted to do a little thing with Vish, but I think Vish didn't feel like he wanted to speculate on prospects. He doesn't do the deep dive on the draft, so he's going to wait till Saturday to join us to find out who they talked about. But we are going to go live after the draft, and we'll have a live stream tonight. And if the 49ers do anything, we'll go live and talk about it. So stay tuned for the coverage around the draft. And if the Niners, every time the Niners pick, of course, we'll put out a video on it. We'll do a live stream. We'll give you guys a chance to weigh in. We're also going to go Krueger Cohn tonight after the draft. So if you want to talk about what your team did or did not do, and what, the speculation going into the weekend, going into day 2, will the Niners trade Brandon Aiyuk? Will they trade Trey Lance? Will they trade Javon Kinlaw? Will they trade Ambry Thomas? Will they trade for a veteran? There's a bunch of veterans out there that are supposed to be available. Clyde Edwards-Helaire from Kansas City is supposedly available. Montez Sweat, according to the reports, is available. Devin White, wants out. I don't know if he's available, but he wants out. Jerry Jeudy's probably going to get dealt. Cortland Sutton's probably going to get dealt. KJ Hamler. There's a number of guys around the league that could get dealt. A lot of those players, with the deadline coming up on the 5th-year option, is Monday. You've got to decide on the 5th-year option. So for the players in the Kinlaw draft, in the Aiyuk draft. So there's a number of players. Miami's got the corner Noah Igbenogany. There's 5 or 6 other guys. Chase Young, Chase Young was one of those guys that, he was one of those guys that was a 5th-year option. Washington declined the 5th-year option. So I think there's going to be a few teams probably on Saturday that are staring at basically not offering the 5th-year option to players they took high up in that particular draft. And those guys are going to be available probably for 6th or 7th round picks on Saturday if you want them. And a lot of them that don't get traded will be cut early next week. And Javon Kinlaw could be one of those guys. And it sounds like from talking to Grant that he kind of believes that that Kinlaw might get cut. I think Kinlaw has enough value where somebody would give you a day 3 pick, but he's got a significant salary and he's got a knee problem and he's got some bad film, from that Philly game for sure that teams are going to look right at. Why? Because that was his last game, and they're going to see him getting kicked out of the club and just playing with no functional strength at all. And Greg says Kinlaw ain't getting cut. He's probably not getting cut because there's no real advantage to cutting him. But I would not be surprised if they flipped him on day 3 for a pick and then turned around and drafted some interior player to replace him with that pick. That's how I see that coming down. We got this one from Glass Half Full Guy. If Aiyuk isn't traded today, do you see him staying on the 49ers this season? I do. I don't. I think John Lynch kind of made it clear last week. Bosa, not going anywhere. Aiyuk, really, they don't want to move. And it makes sense they don't want to move Aiyuk because in John's mind, they're going for it. And that's, to me, if there's one theme that I think is, if you're saying, well, what's going on with the Niners? Give me a theme. What's their mindset? How are they thinking going into this draft? I think I can correctly assess this. I think that they believe that their Super Bowl window is starting to close and that there's some serious urgency on putting together a great freaking D-line. And Hargrave was step one, but I think you're going to see step two this weekend. I think you're going to see them go for 2 or 3 defensive linemen. I would not be surprised if they made a trade and got a higher pick and went for an Isaiah Foskey. I think Foskey's a plug-and-play edge rusher. Now, I don't know that I would do that. I like Foskey. I like Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. I think they're 2 really safe picks. But this draft is so loaded with edge rushers that I don't think I would do that. I don't think I would trade up for a pick and use it on an edge rusher. I think I would use that pick on a different position. Why? Because every mock that I did, and I'm going to do another one before the draft this afternoon, I'll do one more, my final mock. They're all, when you look at the board, the depth of the edge rushers is so incredible that you can find an edge rusher on day 3, and you're probably going to be able to find a couple edge rushers after day 3. I mean, they're not going to be the guys that are going in round 1 and round 2, of course, but there's good edge rushers all throughout this draft. So you don't necessarily have to have Foskey. Now, I do think Foskey is a plug-and-play guy. I do. He's 265. He runs, great time. He's motor. I could see them seeing Foskey the way they saw Bryant Young coming out, where they had, they really felt like they needed a guy who they could just plug in right away and play as a rookie. And what did he do? He plugged in. He played right as a rookie. They won the Super Bowl. He stuck him right on that line, and him and Stubby plugged up the middle. It was an incredible tandem, and the Niners went on and won the Super Bowl. Well, now they've got Hargrave and they've got Bosa, and but I could definitely see them getting a premier. To me, their primary need, if you said what's their primary need, Grant thinks it's tackle, but I think the Niners like Colton McKivitz, and with Feliciano and Zakelj coming on, I think there's also a chance that Spencer Burford slides out to right tackle. So you got McKivitz, you got Burford. You sign that gigantic veteran street free agent, Matt Pryor, 6'7", 330. There's some really good day 3 tackles that I really like in this draft. So, to me, it's like if you can get up for one of the top tier guys, okay, but I don't think they'll be able to get up that high. And then it's just a matter of, how does the board fall? But I think offensive tackle is not the primary need. I think they are comfortable starting week 1 with Colton McKivitz and maybe Burford. Or maybe they get a veteran after the draft, or maybe they find somebody late in the draft. But as far as edge rushers go, I think they could find an edge rusher late, but I think they love Foskey. And I think the fact that he was at their pro day really speaks to their interest. Because who does that? Who goes to a pro day 100 miles away from their home to meet with guys who pick 75 picks away from where you're projected to go, unless they actually told your agent that there was a viable chance that they would get up in your neighborhood so they could draft you? So to me, that was an indicator of they've got something cooking, and there's a chance they'll move up. I'm not saying they're going to land him, but I think he would be their target if they did. If they could move up, I think a guy like him would be their target. The other guy who I'm really looking forward to seeing where he goes in this draft, because I just love him. When I watch the film, I'm like, this guy is awesome, is Kalijah Kancey from Pittsburgh, who was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He played like 40% of the snaps at D end. The rest of the time he played at D tackle. He's 6'1", 285, but one of the most decorated players in all of college football, drawing comparisons because of the school that he played at and how decorated he is to Aaron Donald. I don't think he's Aaron Donald, but he's freaking special. I mean, you put Kalijah Kancey, somehow, some way, you could get Kalijah Kancey. I'm moving whoever I need. If I got to move Lance, I'm doing it. I've got to move Aiyuk, I'm doing it. Kalijah Kancey is a superstar defensive lineman, superstar. And I think he could be the replacement for Armstead down the road. And this year he could be the guy that plays opposite Bosa next to Armstead and Hargrave. That would be a freaking awesome defensive line. Now you've got a defensive line that rivals the Eagles. Now you got a defensive line that can, you can get away playing young. The Niners are going to have a young secondary. Let's be honest. They got young guys back there now. They're probably going to draft 2 or 3 DBs. It's going to be a young secondary. That's why re-signing Tayshaun Gibson was so important, because he's kind of the leader back there. And you got to have some alphas. You got to have some veterans. So Gibson's going to get everybody lined up right, but there are going to be a lot of young players back there. How do you cover young players? Having a big rush up front. So whether it's Foskey, Cansey, or somebody else, to me, the priority is going to be, I think you're going to see the Niners go 3 edge or 3 D linemen. I think they'll go 3 DBs, maybe a slot corner as number 1 need, and then an outside corner and another safety. I think they'll go 3 DBs, 3 D linemen. So I could see 6 players in the draft to those spots. I think they could go tight end, maybe 2 tight ends. I think they could go offensive tackle. And then the quarterback thing, if they're not going to trade Trey Lance, they're not going quarterback, because there's no way. I even saw an article where Matt Barrows was speculating about this. There is no draft quarterback that the 49ers can draft that is likely to slip through waivers and get on the practice squad. So why do it? Well, you're not going to draft a quarterback in this draft unless they're going to make your team. You're not going to draft Jake Hayner and then expose him to waivers in August. He'll get claimed, as would Tanner McKee, as would DTR, as would Jaron Hall, as would Aiden O'Connell, as would Clayton Tune, as would Max Duggan, as would Stetson Bennett, as would Malik Cunningham. Do you see what I'm saying? All those guys are going to get claimed. So basically, unless they get some, the kid Bonner out of Utah State, but even then, once you've picked Brock Purdy, and every team in the league got 3 quarterbacks, and some teams don't really like their 3rd quarterback, and then you mix in injuries. Once you discovered Brock Purdy, I don't think you can go for a rookie quarterback and sneak him through waivers. No way. No way. Heck, if I was a personnel guy, any quarterback that the Niners draft based on their Brock Purdy pick, I'm going to go study that player. I want to see what they saw. They've got an eye for it. They showed you that last year. So there's no way they're going to be able to draft a quarterback and sneak him through waivers at the end of camp. So you're not doing it. You're not drafting a guy in April and giving him to some other team in August, and you're not putting 4 quarterbacks on your roster, and you're not going to waive Darnold, Purdy, or Lance in August. So that the whole rookie quarterback thing, it's an either or. They're either going to trade Trey and then draft a rookie quarterback, or they're not going to draft a rookie quarterback. Now, Lynch kind of made it sound like they were just doing their due diligence. They met with DTR 3 times. Due diligence. That's what he's calling that. And maybe he's right. Maybe he's being straight with us right there. Maybe it is just their due diligence, because there's no way they're drafting a quarterback and not trading Lance. Or if they do, then Lance is not going to be around very long. Or this player's just going to be on a different team in September, this rookie quarterback. So glass half full guy, yes. If Aiyuk is not traded today, I do see him staying with the 49ers. And I hope they keep Aiyuk, because Aiyuk, I think, is coming into his own as one of the best young receivers in football. It's been kind of a slow build. My only question is, do you need somebody as good as Aiyuk when you have this many weapons? A lot of people would say, oh, come on, you always need as many great weapons as you possibly can. Yeah, but you got to pay him. So you're going to have to pay Aiyuk 14. I forget what the 5th-year deal is. It's like $14 million, or might be closer to $15 million. If you're going to sign him, it's going to take big money. And you got Debo, and you got Kittle, and you got McCaffrey, and you got a number of guys. I do agree, though, with several of Grant's points. I think Aiyuk's going to age better than Debo. I think you could make an argument that Aiyuk is the better route runner, that Aiyuk is better at the catch point, that Aiyuk's more refined as a receiver than Debo. He's more of a downfield receiver. Yeah, I think you can make those arguments for Aiyuk. But still, it's going to be interesting, because there are teams that will look at the wide receivers in this draft and say, "What? These guys? I'd rather have Aiyuk. I mean, if you look at the top wide receiver in the draft, Jackson Smith Nigba from Ohio State, had a great productive career. Okay, so figure he's number one. But then everybody after that, I'd rather have Aiyuk. Quentin Johnston, TCU, much rather have Aiyuk. I kind of like Jordan Addison from SC, but he's still 5'11", 175 pounds. I'd rather have Aiyuk. Ayuk's way bigger, way more physical. Ayuk's better than Josh Downs. Ayuk's better than Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. He's better than Cedric Tillman. I do love Jonathan Mingo from Ole Miss. And if they wanted to go Jonathan Mingo, okay. And I love Marvin Mims quite a bit from Oklahoma. Michael Wilson from Stanford was the best wide receiver in Mobile. Had a terrific week there. And there's other guys. A.T. Perry from Wake. Xavier Hutchinson was Brock Purdy's receiver at Iowa State. Do they go with him? Raheem Jarrett from Maryland's a terrific little slot receiver. It's not that little, actually, about 6 feet. Jaden Reed, Ronnie Bell they brought in, Bryce Ford Wheaton. I mean, there's some interesting receivers for sure that you could replace Aiyuk with. That would be the argument. Would be like, okay, you trade Aiyuk for a pick, maybe you turn that into a Michael Mayer, and then you replace Aiyuk in the draft with one of those guys I just named, or even somebody after that. But it's a risk. It's a huge risk. They took that risk with Buckner, and they crapped out. They traded Buckner. He was an impact defensive tackle who demanded double teams, and they replaced him with Kinlaw. And Kinlaw's got a bum knee and never gave you anything as a pass rusher. And now you had to sit there and go find Hargrave and give him the money that you should have paid Buckner. So they swung and missed there. But I liked the idea at the time, which was, hey, let's handle the cap by prioritizing 2 over 1, which they did, Armstead and Ward over Buckner, and then replace Buckner in the draft. But they just swung and missed. And that's the danger, is that the draft is a crapshoot. There's a failure rate to the thing, and it's hit and miss. So Ayuk's a sure deal. He's a for sure deal. If you're the New York Giants and you're trying to get better next year, Aiyuk is a whole lot safer than the rookie receivers. So, yeah, if the New York Giants come calling, I want their first-round pick. And I wouldn't make it without their first-round pick, because you're handing them a receiver that's going to have a big year. And they're in your conference and could prevent you from going to the Super Bowl. So just something to weigh in. I got a little draft guru who's going to join me after the draft in the live stream. We've also invited Bay Area Baller, who talks a lot of Niners. He's going to join us as well, hopefully. If the Niners do anything in the draft, I'll immediately go live, so look for that. We'll also be putting out videos on all the 49ers moves between, really throughout the weekend. So we should have some phenomenal draft coverage. Jack Hammer's going to stop by at some point, I think probably tomorrow after day 2. But we'll be all over the draft Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. All right, couple mentions from our sponsors before we bolt for the door. We already played our pig in a pickle. Now a little thought from Telmetrics.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it. Hands down.
Hey, do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch. When you see that wink from Pasquale, you know we're at the end of the show. I said our little draft guru, but Alex Barber, who is a good follow on Twitter at Hail Mary Sports, Hail Mary Sports with an S, Sports, 2 S's on the end. He is the creator, analyst, and host of Hail Mary Sports, and he talks a lot about the NFL draft. And so we're going to talk a little NFL draft at the end of round 1 with Alex Barber. He's going to stop by. I'm really looking forward to that, and should be fun. A couple on the star chats. MF in the chat says Farhan moving Patrick Bailey up after 60 at-bats, 60 double-A at-bats. I like that. Dude, it's time for Farhan to get some of those guys through the system. Cardinals, by the way, up 5-0 on the Giants. Is that going on right now? Dayball, 8th inning, 5-0. Giants getting beat by the Cards. You knew the Cards were going to bring it today. They had to avoid the sweep. They didn't want to get swept by the Giants. We got this one from 14 Ace Windu, Mafia Sausage. Gregus, make you a sausage you can't refuse. No, but the star chat was, how about them Niners? He says, hot take. Zach Harrison is a future Hall of Fame player. All right, Zach Harrison is an incredible talent, but he didn't do anything for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And yet, if you go look at a lot of the mock drafts where the 49ers pick in the 3rd round, he's staring them in the face. He's projected to go, and what I'm looking at here, from 88 to 108, somewhere in there. And the 49ers picked 99, 101, 102. And Zach Harrison is 6'5", 275-pound redshirt junior. In some ways, he's more of a prototype than Bosa as far as size, speed. This guy ran 4.47 at 6'6", 272 coming out of high school. He was a 5-star. And he just didn't do it. He just didn't do it. I said didn't do that. Didn't do it. He just didn't sack the quarterback. But, I mean, this is very, very often for the Buckeyes. But, the guy also is the prototype physically, and he was on a line with some other good players. To me, he's exactly what you're looking for as far as talent. Doesn't mean he can play. Some guys look incredible, and they just can't play. And that, at the end of the day, that's what being a personnel guy is about. You got to be able to look at 2 guys that are both, 6'3", 265, and say that guy is a Pro Bowler and this guy is an undrafted free agent who barely can make the league. And they look literally like the same guy. So you got to be able to kind of pick that out. And the Niners have had a lot of success on day 3 finding guys. But Harrison's interesting for sure. Blue chip talent. And where they're picking around 100, he is going to be a hard player to pass. I will agree with you there. It can be a very, very hard player to pass up because they need that edge rusher. So, anyway, that's going to do it for us. Thanks for everybody who joined in. Thanks for the sponsors. Thanks to Grant Cohn for jumping in. Check us out after for our post-round 1 live stream. And until then, have a great rest of your Thursday.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah.